Hello, everyone. I'm Advocate Sakshi Aswal, and it's a pleasure to be here at the renowned platform Legal Vidya. I'll be taking up the lectures of contract law. This will be a very basic and introductory lecture. I'm really thrilled to welcome you all in today's lecture, where we'll dive deep into the fascinating and fundamental principles of contract law. Contract law is not just a very dry subject, it is actually a very relevant part of our daily lives. Think about it, from buying a cup of coffee to signing a major business deal, from a simple promise between friends to complex international agreements. Contracts are everywhere. They are the foundational pillar for both commercial and personal interactions, establishing a framework that provides legal power टू द प्रोमिसेस. क्या आपको लगता है कि हर प्रॉमिस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होता है? जस्ट थिंक अबाउट इट फॉर अ मोमेंट. We'll explore this very question today. So, while talking about contract law, I would want to give you a little background to the legal aspect of it. The act which primarily deals with contracts is Indian Contract Act 1872. But there are other acts also, like Sales of Goods Act 1930, Specific Relief Act 1963, Indian Partnership Act 1932, Negotiable Instrument Act 1881, Companies Act 2013, Consumer Protection Act 2019, Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996, Transfer of Property Act 1882, and so on and so forth. So, these acts come into the play depending upon the scenarios. सपोज दो पार्टीज हैं और वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में इंटर करती हैं रिलेटेड टू सम प्रॉपर्टी. तो प्रॉपर्टी यहाँ पर मेजर एस्पेक्ट है, तो रियल एस्टेट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इसको इस कैटेगरी में आएगा. तो बहुत सारी कैटेगरीज हैं कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स की, जैसे कमर्शियल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, रियल एस्टेट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, एज आई सेड बिफोर. वी हैव इवन टेक्नोलॉजी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, वी हैव इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. क्लॉजेस भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करते हैं. डेडलॉक क्लॉज बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. इवन आर्बिट्रेशन क्लॉज बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सेटलमेंट डिसाइड करती हैं दोनों पार्टीज कि कभी भी अगर कोई डिस्प्यूट या डिसएग्रीमेंट होगा दोनों पार्टीज के बीच में, तो वो कैसे उसको रिजॉल्व करेंगे. अगर आर्बिट्रेशन क्लॉज इंक्लूडेड है, then obviously both the parties will go to the arbitration court, and that's how the issue will be resolved. So these very minor things, these clauses, make a very important impact on the contract itself. but आज हम अपने लेक्चर में बहुत ही बेसिक और सिंपल अंडरस्टैंडिंग से एक फाउंडेशन समझेंगे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लॉ की. We will carefully examine the core ideas of contract law. Our journey will cover four key areas. First, we'll clarify the critical differences between an agreement and a contract, and the super important concept of enforceability. Second, we look at the legal requirements for a valid contract, especially through the lens of Section 10 of Indian Contract Act 1872, and compare these with essential common law principles. Third, we'll categorize contracts into their main types: valid, void, and voidable, explaining their unique features and legal consequences. Finally, we will conclude this particular lecture with a detailed look at two landform court decisions or judgments. Those are Balfour versus Balfour and Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. And these particular landmark judgments will depict or will throw light on how judges' rulings have profoundly shaped and you know it has become a precedent to understanding the contract principles and how they are applied. तो अब हम स्टार्ट करते हैं इंट्रोडक्शन से. So, contract law at its heart is about making promises legally binding. It provides a strong structure within which commitments can be recognized, upheld, and enforced. This legal framework isn't just a theory. It's a practical necessity that ensures things are predictable and stable in our economic and social interactions. It allows people to confidently rely on promises made by others. Basically, contract law spells out the rights and duties of people entering into contracts. And it also offers clear ways to get justice if someone doesn't keep their promises or breaks the agreement. The roots of contract law are deep in common law traditions. It has evolved over centuries through court decisions and societal needs. This evolution has led to the gradual concept of detailed principles governing things like offer, acceptance, consideration, and capacity. In many places, including India, these common law principles have been written into laws, like the Indian Contract Act 1872, as I was discussing earlier. This act helps to standardize and adapt these basic principles to specific legal and societal situations, giving us a complete legal framework for contractual relationships. Now, let's talk about fundamental concepts. To truly understand contract law, it's crucial to clearly grasp three basic but often confused concepts: agreement, contract, and enforceability. ये जो टर्म्स हैं तीनों, ये डिफरेंट स्टेजेस और क्वालिटीज को डिपिक करती हैं. एंड अग्रीमेंट को समझना एक बहुत ही सिंपल टास्क है. If I will try to explain you agreement in a very simple way, then it can be considered as an agreement uh, which is a mutual understanding or arrangement between two or more parties. As defined by Section 2, Subclause E of the Indian Contract Act, an agreement includes every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. To form an agreement, one party must make a clear offer and the other party must give a corresponding acceptance. तो एक पार्टी यहाँ पर ऑफर दे रही है और जो दूसरी पार्टी है वो उस ऑफर को क्लियरली एक्सेप्ट कर रही है, उस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में लिखे सारे टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस को भी एक्सेप्ट कर रही है, तभी वो एक वैलिड अग्रीमेंट बन रहा है. एंड देन वो अग्रीमेंट कन्वर्ट हो सकता है इनटू अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. Agreements can be in various forms, from formal written documents to informal spoken understandings. While a spoken agreement is generally valid, providing it in court often depends on whether the person claiming it can provide enough evidence of its existence and terms. Now, let's talk about contract and how it's different from an agreement. A contract, unlike a simple agreement, has a crucial extra feature. It's an agreement that can be enforced by law. This particular line, enforced by law, you need to stress upon it a little. And this is the crucial aspect. And it makes an agreement different from contract. तो जैसे मैंने पहले बोला था कि क्या हर अग्रीमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट होता है, थिंक अबाउट इट. The answer is no. While every contract starts as an agreement, not all agreements become contracts. An agreement becomes a contract only if it meets specific legal conditions that allow it to be legally recognized and upheld in a court of law. So basically, this brings us to enforceability. This is the key element that turns an agreement into a contract. It means that a contract can be legally upheld and put into action through court processes. This concept isn't just a technical detail, it's the very cornerstone of every contract out there. Its importance lies in deciding whether the parties involved can seek legal solutions like getting compensation, damages, or forcing the other party to perform, which is specific performance, if one party fails to fulfill their duties as stated in the agreement. For an agreement to be considered enforceable, it must meet several conditions. These usually include a clear and definite offer, a clear acceptance, mutual consent, um, which is also considered as a meeting of minds, proper consideration, and a clear intention to create legal relations. दोनों पार्टीज को क्लियर होना चाहिए अपने माइंड में कि उन्हें लीगल रिलेशंस फॉर्म करने हैं. The journey from a simple understanding to a legally binding contract isn't automatic. It's a deliberate legal filtering process. Many social or family arrangements, though agreements in a general sense, are intentionally kept out of legal regulation unless they are clearly meeting the strict rules for enforceability. This particular legal policy prevents our court system from getting overloaded with endless, trial processes, and even the respects. It also respects the independence of relationships that are mainly governed by societal norms, trust, or affection, rather than the legal force. The law steps in the is in only when um, the legal aspect comes into the picture only when parties genuinely intend their arrangement to have legal consequences and follow specific formal or substantive requirements. That means parties जो है म्यूचुअल अंडरस्टैंडिंग से सेटल कर सकती हैं अपने इश्यूज, बट अगर किसी भी कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में कोई ऐसा क्लॉज मेंशन्ड है कि लीगल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस होंगे अगर पार्टीज के बीच में डिसएग्रीमेंट होते हैं, तभी लीगल वे में और कोर्ट्स में उसका जो है सेटलमेंट होगा. Furthermore, the requirement of an intention to create legal relations as a condition for enforceability suggests that a mere exchange of promises, even with consideration, isn't enough to form a contract. This element acts as a fundamental gatekeeper before a contract can even be considered. It demands that there must be a conscious decision by the parties to make their arrangement subject to legal scrutiny and potential remedies. Without this particular conscious intention, and agreement, no matter how clearly stated, might remain outside the scope of contract law. एक agreement कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं बन सकता अगर दोनों पार्टीज के बीच में क्लियर क्लैरिटी नहीं है कि उनको एक लीगल इंटेंशन रखनी है, उनका एक लॉफुल ऑब्जेक्ट है. So it's very important to have this conscious intention. This principle helps distinguishing legal binding commitments. Usually it is linked with business or significant understandings, from informal understandings or social gatherings. Now, when we talk about the essentials of a valid contract, I would like to do a little analysis of Section 10 of Indian Contract Act. For an agreement to gain the power of a legally binding contract, it must satisfy a set of essential elements. Okay. So basically, in India, Section 10 of the Indian Contract Act 1872 provides a legal foundation for the contract to become valid, and it states that all agreements are contracts if they are made by the free consent of parties competent to contract for a lawful consideration and with a lawful object, and are not hereby expressly declared to be void. This section, while it is very basic, okay, still it is supported by several common law principles that are equally important for contract formation. Let's break down these detailed elements. एक एक करके इसको देखते हैं बिल्कुल सिंपल वर्ड्स में. So first is free consent of parties. Consent, when we talk about it, the main part of any agreement is basically this particular aspect, free consent of parties. And it must be given freely and genuinely without any outside influence or problems. Consent is free only when it's not caused by force, which is coercion, unfair influence, that is undue influence, cheating like fraud, and wrong information like misrepresentation or a mistake. This makes sure all parties truly and willingly agree to the contract terms. अगर किसी पर दबाव डाला गया है या उसे धोखा दिया गया है तो वो फ्री कंसेंट नहीं है. Next important aspect is competent parties. So competency of parties is also very crucial aspect of it. For a contract to be valid, the people entering it must be legally able to do so. Legal competency means a person must be an adult, which means 18, above the 18 years of age, have a sound mind, means वो mentally stable हैं, and not be legally disqualified from contracting by any specific law. This is very important for protecting the vulnerable people. जैसे एक माइनर, माइनर मीन्स कोई भी 18 ईयर्स से बिलो का जो भी चाइल्ड है, या कोई भी अनसाउंड माइंड का व्यक्ति है, जैसे कि मेंटली जो अनस्टेबल हैं, वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं कर सकते हैं साइन. Lawful consideration is the third most important aspect. Consideration is like the price for which one party's promise is sought. So it means what both parties agree to give up or promise to give up in exchange for the other party's promise or performance. For a contract to be enforceable, consideration must be mutual, have some value in the eyes of law, like goods, services, or a future promise, and be legally sufficient. This means consideration cannot be illegal. It cannot be against public policy or something a party is already legally bound to do. बिना किसी कंसिडरेशन के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट वैलिड नहीं होता. अगर मैं आपको कुछ दे रही हूँ तो उसके बदले में आप भी कुछ ना कुछ दोगे, तो वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, अगर आप नहीं दे रहे हो तो फिर वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं बनेगा, बिकॉज तो इट इज़ लाइक अ गिव एंड टेक काइंड ऑफ अ सिचुएशन. Lawful object is the fourth most important aspect. The purpose or goal for which the agreement is made must be lawful, and basically an object is unlawful if it's forbidden by law, goes against other laws, is fraudulent, could harm someone or their property, or is considered immoral or against public policy by a court. This ensures contracts don't support illegal activities. आप किसी इलीगल काम के लिए कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नहीं बना सकते, जैसे चोरी करना. इसका कोई भी, ये कोई लॉफुल ऑब्जेक्ट ही नहीं है इसका, बिकॉज राइट. Now we'll talk about the fifth most important aspect, not expressly declared void. Even if an agreement seems to meet all the points above, like जो भी हमने अब तक डिस्कस किए हैं, still it won't be a valid contract if the Indian Contract Act itself has clearly declared it void. Examples include agreements that stop someone from marrying, doing business, or going to court, or agreements that are unclear, gambling agreements, and agreements to do impossible things. Okay, so these are all the examples of it. While Section 10 lists certain key legal requirements, other fundamental elements, mostly from common law principles, are also equally important and essential for a valid contract. These elements often come before or add to the conditions in Section 10. Offer and acceptance. Any agreement starts with a clear offer from one party, and that's how, slowly the another party accepts those particular clear, that particular offer, and then both the parties are clear about the terms and condition. फिर दूसरी पार्टी जो फर्स्ट पार्टी ने ऑफर दिया है उसको एक्सेप्ट करती है. There must be a definite proposal and a clear communicated agreement to its terms. If your acceptance changes the original offer, it's usually seen as a counter offer, not an acceptance. Without this basic exchange, no agreement and thus no contract can exist. And consensus at idem, which is a legal, Latin maxim. This principle means that the parties entering the contract must agree on the same thing in the same way. It shows a true mutual understanding of the terms and subject matter, ensuring both parties are truly aligned in their contract intentions. दोनों पार्टीज एक ही बात पर अग्री होनी चाहिए, उनके दिमाग में सेम थिंकिंग होनी चाहिए और सेम क्लैरिटी होनी चाहिए कि ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट क्यों साइन हो रहा है. Intention to create legal relationship is also very important here. As we discussed, parties must intend for their agreement to have legal consequences, meaning they must know that if they fail to keep their promise, they could face legal action. Social or family agreements usually lack this intention, which is a key filter for distinguishing legally binding contracts from informal agreements. Sorry, informal arrangements. Certainty and possibility of performance. So while talking about this particular point, I would like to talk about the very significant aspect of contract, which is uh, that the terms of the agreement must be clear, definite, and easy to understand and carry out. Also, the agreed upon actions must be objectively possible to perform. Agreements do not, agreements to do impossible things basically can also um, be naturally void. कॉन्ट्रैक्ट के टर्म्स क्लियर होने चाहिए और जो प्रॉमिस किया है वो ऐसा होना चाहिए कि वो इजीली पूरा हो पाए और वो पॉसिबल हो पूरा करना. लीगल फॉर्मेलिटीज भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. वाइल स्पोकन agreements are generally valid, some types of contracts might need specific legal formalities to be enforceable, like being in writing, witnessed, or registered, depending on the law. These formalities often help as evidence, making it easier to prove the agreement's existence and terms in the court. So इन सभी एलिमेंट्स में से सबसे ज़रूरी कौन सा है, यू कैन जस्ट कमेंट डाउन बिलो इन द वीडियो, इन द comment section. You can write it down which element you found most important or you think is very very crucial to be included. Take a moment to think about it. The essential elements of a valid contract are interconnected. I have especially mentioned interconnectedness in one of these particular, um, you know, aspects here. I have mentioned interconnectedness, right? So basically, it forms a chain of validity where each link is indispensable for the contract's enforceability. The absence or defect in even a single element can make the entire contract invalid. For example, if consideration is unlawful, or if consent is not freely given, or if the party lacks the legal capacity to contract, the agreement is legally unenforceable and it creates no duties for the parties. This dependency means that the contract formation is a strict process. It is like a chain kind of a situation where one particular element is attached to the other. Now we will classify the contracts into valid, void, and voidable. Contracts are broadly categorized based on their legal standing and enforceability. Let's understand these three types: valid, voidable, and void. Each type has distinct characteristics, its legal implications, and consequences for the parties involved. A valid contract is one that fulfills all the essential elements of contract law, making it legally binding and fully enforceable in a court of law. In a valid contract, all parties are legally I would say bound to obtain certain respective promises and to even seek judicial remedies if another party is at default. An example of a valid contract is an agreement to purchase a blue house. Now where the house is delivered is of indeed blue color, but it should align perfectly with the contractual terms. Simple, clear, valid. Um, and now talking about a void agreement. Void agreement is fundamentally different from a valid contract. It is not an actual contract, and it also includes no legal force from its very beginning stage. Such agreement is considered void ab initio, meaning it is null and it is without any legal standing from the very beginning. Void agreements typically lack one or more essential elements required for validity. Common reasons include an illegal purpose, example, a contract to commit a crime, the lack of a lawful object or consideration, or one of the parties being legally deemed mentally incompetent at the time of formation. So, since a void agreement never legally existed, neither party is required to actually take any action to terminate it, right? As it imposes no legal obligations and fails to create any legal rights. The Indian Contract Act expressly declares certain types of agreements as void, regardless of other factors. सो जैसे अगर आप किसी को मारने का या मर्डर करने का किसी को कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बना रहे हैं तो वो शुरू से ही वॉइड है क्योंकि वो लीगल लॉफुल ऑब्जेक्ट ही नहीं है, तो उसकी कोई लीगल वैल्यू नहीं है. Voidable agreements present a more nuanced category. They initially possess the necessary elements to be enforceable and thus appear valid on the face of it. However, they contain a specific flaw or defect that grants one or both the parties, the option to void or cancel the contract. A voidable, contract begins as a, I would say, legally binding kind of a contract, but it can subsequently be rendered void if the aggrieved party chooses to take action to invalidate it. Conversely, if the injured party decides not to void the contract, it remains void. It remains valid and enforceable. तो जो अग्रीव पार्टी है, जो पार्टी इंजर्ड हुई है, उसके डिसीजन में है ये कि उनको वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कंटिन्यू करना है, उसे वैलिड रखना है या उसे वॉइड यानी कैंसिल कर देना है. The conditions that typically make a contract voidable include situations where consent was induced by any force, misrepresentation, fraud, undue influence, or coercion. For instance, if a contract is signed under extreme pressure or under any threat, it is considered voidable but not void. Why? Because the victim still has a choice to go ahead with the contract if they want to, perhaps because they still find the terms beneficial despite the forced considerations. क्या आप ऐसे कोई कॉन्ट्रैक्ट का एग्जाम्पल दे सकते हो जो voidable हो? Imagine someone selling you a car by lying about its condition, or maybe a house without telling you about the all, I would say, features of the house. The main difference between void and voidable contract lies in their legal status and the power of the parties. Okay, so why is it so? Because a void contract cannot be legally performed because it never had legal existence. Whereas a voidable agreement can still be performed unless the party has the right to void it, takes action to do so. Void contracts are invalid from the very beginning, while voidable contracts are initially valid but can be set aside at the discretion of the aggrieved party. So I hope you're clear about these particular contracts. Void, I have mentioned all these types of contracts here in the PPT as well. I've made this particular like table also to make it better for the understanding. You can go through these notes, you can go through these PPTs to understand it better. These slides will be provided to you. So let's now discuss some landmark cases. Okay. So court decisions play a very vital role in shaping and clarifying how contract law principles are applied. So, two landmark cases that we are going to discuss show how courts interpret fundamental aspects of contract formation, especially regarding the intention to create legal relations and the legal capacity of parties. Balfour versus Balfour. This particular case is very important English contract law case that deeply influenced the understanding of intention to create legal relations, especially in family or domestic kind of situations. Okay, so the facts are Mr. Balfour, an engineer, was on leave in England with his wife. Due to Mrs. Balfour's illness, she stayed back while he returned to Ceylon. Before leaving, he promised her 30 euros per month as an allowance. At that time, they were living happily, they were happily married, and later they divorced. And Mrs. Belfort sued her husband for the promised money. So, the legal principle lies here that the Court of Appeal overturned the lower court's decision, ruling that the agreement between Mr. and Mrs. Balfour was not legally enforceable because the parties did not intend to create legal relations. This case set a rule, in English law, that agreements made between spouses, which means the husband and wife, in a family setting are generally not meant to be legally binding. Lord Justice Atkin famously said that such agreements are outside the realm of contracts altogether because the parties never intended that they should be sued upon. He also noted that the consideration in such agreements often comes from natural love and affection, which counts for so little in these old courts. He even remarked that the small courts of this country would have to be multiplied 100-fold if these arrangements were held to result in legal obligations. So, why this particular case is important is because it clearly separates social or family agreements from legally binding contracts. It emphasizes that not every promise, even if it has offer, acceptance, and some form of consideration, becomes an enforceable contract, right? The ruling shows a significant legal policy choice to limit, which is to limit the court interference in private family matters. अम, कोई भी छोटे से घर के मैटर को कोर्ट में ले जाना, इस केस से क्लियर हुआ कि वो कंसिडर नहीं कर सकते इतना कोर्ट में, राइट? So this says, do you think, every petty small thing that arise, any small issue that arises at the home can be taken up to the court, like something like I will make breakfast tomorrow morning, but someone refused to do so, right? This case says no. While it sets a presumption against legal intent, its presumption can be challenged. Later cases like Merit versus Merit showed that if parties were estranged, which means that husband and wife were living separately when they made an agreement, it might be considered as a serious intention to create legal relations, ओवरकमिंग द प्रिजम्पशन. तो इस पर्टिकुलर केस में लीगल रिलेशंस जो है उसकी इंटेंशन नहीं थी पार्टीज के बीच में, इसीलिए ये पर्टिकुलर जो है ऑर्डर है वो अगेंस्ट में था. And another case that I'm going to discuss is Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh case. So, it is a very important Indian contract law case that established a fundamental rule about the legal capacity of minors, which means people who are below the age of 18, to enter into contracts. The facts are Dharmodas Ghosh, who was a minor, mortgaged his property to a moneylender, Brahmodat, to get a loan of rupees 20,000. Importantly, Brahmodat's lawyer, who handled the deal, knew that Dharmodas Ghosh was a minor at the time the agreement was made. तो जो धर्मोदास घोष था वो 18 ईयर्स से बिलो की एज का था जब ये अग्रीमेंट बना था. लेटर घोष थ्रू हिज मदर एंड गार्जियन sued Dutt, asking the court to declare the mortgage void because he was a minor. Both the first court and the high court ruled in Ghosh's favor. The case then went to the Privy Council, but after Dutt passed away, the legal principle which stands still here is the fact that the Privy Council upheld the lower court's decision, ruling that a contract entered into by a minor is absolutely void ab initio, void from the very beginning. This rule is strongly based on Section 11 of Indian Contract Act 1872, which states that for a person to have the capacity to contract, they must be adult, of sound mind, and not otherwise legally disqualified from contracting. The court further held that the doctrine of estoppel, where someone is prevented from denying a fact they previously stated, so this particular doctrine is not applicable here because the moneylender's agent actually knew about the minor's status, meaning the minor had not lied about his age, right? They were being honest, and it was quite evident. Also, Section 64, which deals with voidable contracts, and Section 65, which provides for compensation of base benefits received when an agreement is found to be void or a contract becomes void. These particular two sections, Section 64 and 65 of the Indian Contract Act, were found not applicable. The Privy Council reasoned that these sections only apply where a valid agreement exists or where parties are competent to contract, neither of which was true in this instance, right? The Privy Council also decided that the moneylender, thus and the future generation of that were not entitled to get back the loan money under the Specific Relief Act 1877, as the minor was not bound by the promise made at the time of contracting. Implications that these particular cases deal with are that Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmudas Ghosh set a strong precedent in Indian contract law, providing a very significant protection to minors by clearly stating that they cannot be held responsible in contract. The void ab initio principle means that such contracts have no legal standing from the moment they were supposedly formed. इसका मतलब है अगर कोई माइनर विच मीन्स कोई 18 years से कम के एज का पर्सन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करता है, वो शुरू से ही फिर वॉइड है, उसकी कोई लीगल वैल्यू नहीं है. This absolute lack of capacity offers strong protection for the minors, shielding them from, potentially unfair agreements. Um, However, it also creates challenges for people dealing with minors as they take the risk of the transaction not being enforceable, requiring careful checking of age and capacity in business dealings. While the Mohiri Bibi case established a very strict protective principle, later court interpretations have brought in some flexibility over the time. The strict application of absolutely void could, in some cases, work against the minor's own interest, making it hard for them to enter into beneficial transactions, right? As a result, high courts have interpreted the decision to allow enforcement of contracts made for the minor's benefit and entered into by their guardians within their legal power. This shows how legal interpretation involves to ensure justice and practical use. अब मैंने कुछ दो इम्पोर्टेंट इंटरैक्टिव क्वेश्चंस रखे हैं. यू पीपल कैन कमेंट below in the comment section regarding it. Basically scenario based questions hai, let's think about it. So the first scenario is that a father promises his son that if he scores above 90% in his board exams, he will buy him a new motorcycle. The son works hard, gets 95%, and the father, however, refuses to buy the bike, saying it was just a promise, not a contract. Now, the question which arises is that based on Belfort versus Belfort, do you think the son can legally, enforce this promise? Why or why not? क्या सन जो है वो अपने फादर पे केस कर सकता है मोटरसाइकिल के लिए? Just think about it. Allowing you a minute to think about it. Maybe suggest your thoughts to the other students in the chat. So the answer to this question would be no. This is a classic example of a domestic agreement, likely lacking the intention to create legally relations. And the father's promise stems from a familial affection, right? As we were discussing in Balfour versus Balfour case. So it's completely arising from familiar affection and encouragement, not from a commercial intent to be legally bound. So, next thing is that I want to discuss a little about the second interactive question. Let's consider this scenario, and it is based on Mohiri Bibi's case. A 17-year-old student, eager to start an online business, signs a contract with a web development company to build an e-commerce website for rupees 50,000. He pays 10,000 as an advance. A week later, his parents find out and and are really unhappy about it. So they instruct him to cancel this deal. The company insists on the remaining payment, citing the signed contract. Question that arises here is, can the web development company legally force the student to pay the remaining 40,000 rupees? And if the student cancels, can he get his 10,000 rupees of advance back? Think about Mohiri बीबी वर्सेस दामोदास केस. क्या कंपनी स्टूडेंट से बाकी के पैसे मांग सकती है, और अगर स्टूडेंट कैंसिल करता है तो क्या उसे अपना एडवांस वापस मिलेगा? So I would want you to actively think about it and write down in the comment section. According to Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas case, the contract with the 17-year-old student is basically void ab initio because he is a minor. Thus, the minor is incompetent to contract. The web development company cannot legally force him to pay remaining rupees 40,000. As for the advance, generally, since the contract is void ab initio, there's no legal obligation, and restitution might not be automatically applicable under section 65 of Indian Contract Act, the section which basically deals with agreements agreements discovered to be void, not those void from the outset due to incapacity. However, courts might apply inequitable principles to prevent unjust enrichment, but it depends facts whether the minor received any benefit and if the money is traceable. The core point remains the minor is protected here. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that contract law is a very dynamic mix of written laws, common laws, principles, and evolving court interpretations. It's an essential framework that governs the enforceability of agreement, bringing stability and predictability to countless interactions. We have in this lecture highlighted the critical differences, you know between a simple agreement, a legally binding contract, and the crucial concept of enforceability. We have seen how section 10 of Indian Contract Act, complemented by common law, outlines the essential elements for a valid contract, and how these contracts are categorized into valid, void, and voidable types based on their legal standing. Finally, landmark judgments like Balfour versus Balfour and Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas case vividly, shows how courts interpret and apply these principles, shaping the very fabric of our contractual landscape. This comprehensive and adaptable body of law is essential for regulating promises and ensuring justice in commercial and personal dealings. आई होप आपको आज का लेक्चर पसंद आया हो और कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लॉ की वेरियस एलिमेंट्स जो हैं वो भी समझ आए हों. And thank you for your attention. I'm now open for any questions that you might have. You can drop your thoughts, comments, and any doubts in the comment section. Thank you so much.